In 1972, a little bit of Hollywood came to Thief River Falls, Minnesota, riding on a snowmobile. This is the story of a film little remembered except among those who waited on a cold November night in anticipation of seeing it, that for just a moment brought the excitement of a world premiere to a small-town theater. The news that a professional film crew would put Thief River Falls, some of its residents, and its chief export, the Arctic Cat snowmobile, on the big screen captured the imagination of this town.
It was something else. It was a big production is what it was.
In the months leading up to the big night, the Times printed articles and pictures of the movie stars. The film's theme song played constantly on KTRF. The movie, called It Ain't Easy, was reported at the time to be the first feature film made in Minnesota.
I think it was supposed to be like the Easy Rider of snowmobiling.
It premiered at the Falls Theater on a Thursday evening, November 1st, 1972.
I can remember sitting there and looking down at the screen, and my name came up and Charlie Lofton's name come up, and it was kind of neat.
A chartered plane filled with columnists, TV personalities, dignitaries, and business leaders flew north from the Twin Cities for the screening.
It was our movie, and we're going to the town that actually supported it, and that was just a kick.
Their tour bus drove by places featured in the movie: the Fountain Cafe downtown, Ole's Northern Supply, the Arctic Cat testing facility. Outside the theater, the Lincoln High School band played the song "We're from Thief River Falls." WCCO TV's Bill Carlson, who was born in Thief River Falls, was the master of ceremonies. Searchlights lit up the autumn sky, and limousines arrived on LeBrie Avenue, carrying the film's star, Lance Hendrickson, who would go on to appear in the Terminator movies.
We were all told that we needed tuxes, formals were the wives, and they came up with limousines and hauled us up one at a time. We parked and we all got out, and there was floodlights flashing.
But the film's director wasn't happy with his first effort at a full-length feature.
I know that he was upset at the premiere that when he saw it, the movie didn't come out the way he wanted it to come out. But I don't know why. I don't know what was wrong with it.
And It Ain't Easy hasn't been seen since.
Anybody would be crazy to put money into it because it was pretty unfixable.
We decided to track down this elusive film and turn back the clock to Premiere 72, when Hollywood came to Thief River Falls.
Hi, I'm Lee Lynch, and I was the founder of Carmichael Lynch Advertising. One of the clients from 1969 till about 1980 was Arctic Enterprises. During this period, we had won some major awards for some commercials that we did. For This Is the Year of the Cat.
This is the year to get moving. This is the year to be where it's at. This is the year to take winter and live it. This is the year of the cat.
So we said, wait a minute, those are 1-minute commercials, and we've got 2 awards. A movie is just 90 commercials put together, so let's go make a movie and have the world see it. Because we think people in snowbound America would like to see a movie. That would be pretty exciting. So I went to Maury Hurley, who worked for me at the time, and he said, yeah, he's up for it.
Michael Hurley's father, the late Maury Hurley, directed It Ain't Easy.
You know, his dream was always to be a filmmaker. You know, I mean, he ended up, was doing these kind of like docu-films in Minnesota for the Snowcat and Polaris and whatnot. but his dream was always to be like a feature film director, so he always kind of told me about the first movie that he ever made, and it was, he had got the money to do it, and he had gotten people together from Polaris and from Arctic Cat and kind of had sold them on this movie that he was going to make that was going to be set in this world of Arctic Cat.
So he wrote the story.
I think that somebody else wrote the script, and I'm not sure who. Like, on IMDb, I think it says that, I think it was a woman that wrote it.
She had nothing to do with writing. She was sort of a script girl. Maury's a nice guy, by the way. He was trying to give her a credit that she could show that she was a writer for a movie. But it was Maury that wrote it.
He never kept a script or anything. It's just weird. I've never heard him talking about writing the script. I just heard him talking about how the movie came out.
I shouldn't have had Maury write the story and try to produce the story at the same time, because he lost a little objectivity. And he's pretty novice at this time, too, by the way.
It was supposed to be different than the other films he had been doing at Arctic Cat. Like, this was supposed to be like a feature-length feature film. I think it was supposed to be like the Easy Rider of snowmobiling.
We raised $500,000. I put some of my company's money in it, my friend's money, my attorney's money, and then people from Arctic Enterprises. We came up with $500,000, which I think is the equivalent of about $1 million today to make a movie, which is not much.
He had met Lance Henriksen, who's, was in Aliens and went on to do Millennium and do like a lot of stuff. I think he found him at the local Minneapolis theater company. I think for Lance too, is supposed to be a kind of like a coming out party. Some
came from the Guthrie Theater, which had a great stable of actors, and 2 were brought in from California. And they weren't paid a lot of money, but they were paid more than the other people. So it was all actors locally from Minneapolis and from the Guthrie Theater.
I only can get like bits and pieces of how the movie was. So like, it's basically like I'm kind of like putting together everybody's different perspectives of how the film was.
And at the end of the movie, there was no applause. Everybody kind of wondered, what the hell is this? While we're making the movie, the news got to Cinematographer Magazine, which is the big magazine of the movie-making industry, and we got the cover story. At that time, we were calling the movie Storm, S-T-U-R-M. And we bumped Gene Hackman's French Connection off of the cover.
All right, Popeye's here. Get your hands on your heads. Get off the bar and get on the wall. What's mine?
And so we're really excited, saying this is going to be great. This is going to help us get a distributor.
Weather, distance, rough trails are no longer obstacles. The snowmobile has become that dependable.
I mean, my dad loves snowmobiling, and I think he liked the whole aspect of shooting in the cold and shooting in Minnesota, and also shooting on film in the cold. I think he took a lot of pride in as like a filmmaker.
Arctic Cat started this development 12 years ago. In that short time, radical changes in design, performance, and dependability have occurred. Most of these improvements have been forged in the icy fires of competition.
It's just a whole other ballgame when you're like shooting at like almost below zero. You got to make sure the gate doesn't freeze. You got to make sure the film emulsion doesn't freeze. You got to like use a specific kind of camera. You got to get the right kind of shot. And I know like for It Ain't Easy, he used a lot of the same guys that he used to shoot all the snowmobile movies. So like I'm sure that it looked just as great as all those old snowmobile movies looked.
In the history of West Yellowstone, no brand has so completely dominated. Race after race, it's Arctic Cat, Arctic Cat, Arctic Cat.
Ken Bido was on the factory race team for several years. And after that, they kind of retired me and put me into the public relations department. So I got to basically do all the writing for the commercials and what have you for Arctic. About 3 weeks before they started filming, I got the 2 stars of the movie, if you will, and we basically spent 3 weeks living together because they had no idea what snowmobiles was. So I basically trained them into snowmobiling.
Who's Edgar Hateen?
What?
Who's Edgar Hateen?
I know. He's the founder of Arctic Cat.
In fact, in 1956, a gentleman walked into our place of business. His name was Pete Peterson. And he was to request that we build him some type of a vehicle where he could sit on it and travel through the snow, which we did. And we found this was a thing that had a lot of romance. It was a fun thing to do. And we tried to sell it. People wouldn't buy it. We went to phone companies, power line companies, and stuff like that. And finally established a market through a need market. And then the fun market came into its own.
when I was like 11, we would go up every winter. We would go to Edgar Hattin's cabin. It was like he had like a fleet of snowmobiles. I think he might have still worked for Arctic Cat, and they just kind of like would be like, here you go, like here's the new model, try it out. So we would go up there and go snowmobiling all the trails and stuff up at his cabin. But we did that 2 or 3 years when I was probably like 12 to like 14 or 15. So it was fun.
Well, it was basically, as far as writing, it was Charlie Lofton and I. Then we had a couple extras. Larry Coltham got involved with it a little bit.
When this movie was going to happen, there was a race in Hutchinson, Minnesota. So they had their film crew down there, and Maury wanted me to double as the star of this particular movie. In this race, the star was there, and then the villain was in there too. They both were racing.
Looks like you just got out of some flop house somewhere in some big city, right? You're not thinking of riding in this race, are you? With that old washing machine of yours?
Funny or something?
No, I don't try to be anything. You kind of look like you lost a lot, you know what I mean?
Well, it's nice to see you haven't changed, Terrence.
Changed? No use tampering with perfection, right, Merle?
So they rigged it up so that as we were racing, I was a little bit out in front. And then on the last lap of the race, they had rigged up the snowmobile with a wooden dowel pin in the ski. So that when I went into the bank, the dowel pin broke and the ski came off. And it was quite a sight because it was right by one of these big light fixtures, the poles. And that ski just kind of wrapped around the pole. What the scenario was that I finished the race on one ski and won the race with the villain right behind me.
The chase scenes were out on Lake of the Woods, and then there was some stuff done at Bemis Hill. And actually, I think we did film a couple of sequences out in Yellowstone.
Let's see, around Siren, Wisconsin. I remember there was a lot of scenes shot there, a bar scene that was there. Other than that, northern Minnesota, northern Wisconsin.
The inside stuff was done at our engineering department, which was where Holton has his iron shop out there now. And the race shop was just to the south of it, those buildings to the south. And most of it was done in there. There was different setups that they wanted and whatever, but it was basically the way it was.
Charlie Lofton played the part of the villain in this snowmobile race. And Lowell Swenson, I think, was there was a bar that they kind of went into, and they had put him in as the bartender back there with a beard and a scruffy-looking old guy, and I think he played the part of the bartender. Lowell Swenson was the CEO of Arctic Cat.
Charlie Lofton and I were doing the writing for the film, and one of the scenes called for Lance to lose control of his sled and crash. Well, I was doing that part of it. So we rigged this brand new Brute snowmobile, is what I was writing, up to blow up. So we built a ramp, and we get there, and I come riding up to this ramp, and just before I hit it, I've got a string in my hand, and it's got a detonator, and I dive off to the side looking like I bailed off of it, and it hits this ramp and goes flying up into a tree, and just as it hits the tree, it goes, which was quite spectacular at the time. Well, we get back to town here after a couple days later, and Roger Skyme comes walking in, he says, "Where in the devil is my Brute?" He said that I was going to test.
People came to see the crashing and racing snowmobiles. They weren't that interested in the story at all, which didn't hang together.
From my mom's perspective, she says that, I've never seen the movie before, but she says it's not really about a snowmobiler. It's really about a guy coming back from Vietnam and dealing with PTSD.
A returning veteran from Vietnam had hallucinations about an animal trying to get him, and it was a wolf. And so he was very fearful and very aggressive toward wolves, and he finally either shot one or he caught one. He shot it and it wasn't quite dead, and he ripped it up himself right out in the snow. Bloody scene, oh my God. And then it went on from there about his mental problems.
I'm sick of sitting on my own shoulder.
You learn things about yourself.
You get something in your guts you thought you'd lost. Learn you're closer to the edge, then You know, I thought I knew something about myself. But now, you know, the other day I was coming to town and I saw a wolf. And I ran him down and I killed him with my hands. And I could have ripped his guts out and stepped on him.
Why?
I don't know. It happened so fast I didn't know where it came from. Or maybe I do.
I think it was supposed to be like a guy's coming back from the Vietnam War and then kind of is trying to figure out like what his life is now going to be after he comes back from this war. And he basically, you know, was a good snowmobiler. So kind of like falls into, okay, well then I'm going to go race snowmobiles. And then basically everything that happens in there. And I think there might even be like he starts running drugs for somebody at some point.
I recall, I think it was something that had to do with drug running and stuff like that.
I just don't want any slip-ups, T. I want to make sure you've got the info right. So you're going to pick up the stuff at the shack where the guy will be waiting, and he'll hand you the movables. Right, T? He'll hand you the movables, and you'll move them across the ice. Fast to me, T. And where am I going to be?
What's in it?
Well, the less you know, the better. The main men in this don't like too many people knowing too much about.
What's in it?
You really got to be out of it not to know what's that small and worth that much, T. It's really kind of dumb you don't know that, T. It's heroin, T.
He gets involved with these guys that are running drugs from Canada across Lake of the Woods.
What do you think? There's a Mountie waiting in the middle of the lake for T here to come by in his sled? There's nothing up there but snow. You could go from here to Hudson's Bay and back and never see nobody.
And this Reno is trying to get him, and he's chasing him down. And that part of it kind of goes fine. How they get involved with this, it's all of a sudden there's a snowmobile and they're running across. I mean, it doesn't have a storyline getting up to that point, and you don't realize that that's what they're doing, really.
The whole premise, the whole storyline is very valid today.
Gail Menton wrote and performed the soundtrack music for It Ain't Easy.
I mean, bringing guys over on a frozen lake, that's not far-fetched.
Dale started doing the music for a lot of the industrial movies my dad made for like Arctic Cat and Polaris and all these different companies.
I got to go to Big Sky, Montana with Edgar and Lofton and Maury, and we did a big film for Arctic there. I got to ride my first snowmobile. There are about 9 major songs, and a lot of race music, and the big race and the smaller race, and then the narc chase. I got to go to L.A. and help them cast the thing. We recorded and shot everything in Minnesota, Minneapolis, and then Thief River Falls and other places in Minnesota. Finished it and then took it out to Los Angeles to go on the soundstage and mix it and tweak it and that whole thing. And it was a film. It was a real movie. Maury always say, I finally done my movie.
Back then, and it still might be true, 2/3 of all movies never get completed. They die in process. And that was one of the things we worried about, just not getting completed.
Dale says, like, you know, the movie was good, but there was just so many different people coming in and so many different points of view, and there were so many different, I guess, like masters to serve that it kind of seemed like it would have been hard conditions to make a movie by anybody.
Once we got it made, we had a terrible time finding a distributor. Nobody wanted to touch it because it was all in C&D County, small theaters. So then finally we found somebody interested, but they said, you're a general audience. It's too nice a movie. You got to put a little sex in it. We said, what do you mean? We have to go back and put something in it? And they said, yep. And so we showed the minimum requirement. We had 2 people in bed. Nobody realized they were fully clothed. 2 people in bed with each other. And that was enough to get us a PG rating as opposed to a G rating. But that cost a lot of money to go back and redo that whole damn thing.
I thought it should have been better. And I think it was, but I think they just, like you say, they ran out of money, I think is what happened.
What the hell is going on here? Huh? Oh, stop it! Stop it! Oh, get out!
If we'd had another couple $100,000, we could have gone back and reshot and fixed some of the ridiculous scenes, but it still was ridiculous after we'd fixed them. And by the way, nobody after seeing the first part of the movie would invest $200,000 to get it completed again, reshot.
I just remember my dad thinking that the movie hadn't come out like the way he wanted it to have come out. And I don't think that was like the technical aspect. I think it was just I don't know. I've been thinking about this. All I have to go on is what my dad said, and like he's no longer around, and so it's like I know he didn't want us to see it, and I know he had like a kind of a hesitancy about this whole movie, about like why he didn't want people to see it, and I don't know why. So even when I'm talking about the premiere, I know that he was upset at the premiere that when he saw it, the movie didn't come out the way he wanted it to come out.
Everybody was pretty excited, hey, this got done. But in the back of our minds, it was like, I don't know if it was what it should have been.
Production of Premiere 72, When Hollywood Came to Thief River Falls, was made possible by the Minnesota Arts and Cultural Heritage Fund, with interviews from Lee Lynch, Michael Hurley, Larry Coltham, Ken Bido, and Dale Menton. Find an archive of this program and other interviews at radionorthland.org.